Trying to work out my setup, which is a little bit chaotic.
You're here.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. That's good news because it wasn't coming through particularly well.
It's all good. I can hear you perfectly fine. It's not live, by the way.
That is very good news because if it was, then I'm all over the shop.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hard Drive Studio, a show where we highlight creators and a wide range of media people from CrossFit and the sports industry. Today, I'm thrilled to feature a powerhouse of sports reporting, Lauren Smith. Her dynamic storytelling and spirit have captivated audiences across the globe. She's been on the front lines of major sports and events, from Pro Rugby to international cycling, and interviewing top athletes on Red Bull TV. Her passion for sports also extends to fitness competitions, where she covers CrossFit, Strongman, and Hyrox, showcasing her versatility and commitment to promoting athletic performance, bringing stories to life with passion, insight, and a style of her own. Whether she's behind the mic, in front of the camera, or out on the field, one thing's for sure: when Lauren's on the story, you pay attention. So, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today, and welcome to Hard Drive Studios.
Thank you for such a big intro. That's so sweet of you.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
by
always
Lauren on the story, you pay attention. You mean you're waiting for me to fall over, trip over something, have to be picked up off the floor, say the wrong thing.
it happens to the best of us, but I always listen when you're on the mic, that's for sure. Thank you so much for taking some of your precious time. I know you're a busy woman, to
My pleasure.
come and have a little chat. So this show is like really no pressure. I want this to be like a friendly conversation, nothing crazy like strict or official or whatever. And it's nice that I know you, so then the mood is a little bit more relaxed. But I would love to hear, and I think a lot of the people who are listening would also love to hear some of your story. And I'd like to start with your early career. What first sparked your interest in sports journalism and broadcasting?
Probably a bit of an interesting one because actually, when I went into sixth form college, I moved schools, much to my parents' not upset. They were always super supportive, but I got put through the private education system, and I got to sixth form, and I was like, "Mum and Dad, thank you so much for this education, and it's given me this great work ethic. But actually, I want to go to the normal sixth form college so I can do media studies, film studies, art." So you can imagine that went down really well.
Yeah.
My two doctor parents. Um, but yeah, I went thinking I wanted to be a film director. I wanted to work in television and film and make films. And it was that drive that pushed me through kind of like my early kind of sixth form. I don't know if that translates well to American or Belgian audiences or whatever, but it's 16 to 18 years
Okay.
old. At 18, I went off to Thailand, where I was like, I'm going to do a bit of a year out, get some world experience. And I found a kind of like job with on the job training to be an underwater videographer. And I'd already been spending a lot of time filming and editing in my sixth form. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to live in Thailand and I'm going to go and film fish and tourists.
That's
And at
awesome.
18, that's pretty much exactly what I did. I went on, it was a one-way ticket at that stage to Thailand. And I settled into this life where I ended up actually going up the dive master track, becoming a dive master, and then working as an underwater videographer. And that basically helped hone a lot of my edit skills that I still have today. And I did that
Whoa.
for, in total, over a 2-year span, just shy of a year.
Whoa. And what
Um,
time? Wait, what? How old were you back then?
I was 18. I was a very enthusiastic 18-year-old.
That's awesome. And then, yeah, your two doctor parents like, bye, I'm going to
They,
Thailand.
you know what, they were amazing. They've always been absolutely amazing at
Oh, that's
supporting me,
awesome.
because it's quite a big ask to have a creative child when you are a science kind of like, when science is all you know.
Yeah.
But they were great. They supported me. Like, we were all super close as a family. And then
That's
I only
awesome.
came back because I had to go to university. But at that stage, I'd begun to realize that actually what I quite enjoyed doing was a little bit more active and not so much the film side. And that kind of led me towards sport a little bit more. So The summer I
Yep.
came back for university, I decided to do a journalism degree at Cardiff, and I'd got some work experience on the cricket,
Okay.
which I loved. I didn't expect to love it, but I did. I was just like, wow, okay. I didn't know a huge amount about cricket other than
It's pretty
watching the
big.
Ashes.
It's pretty big in Australia, right?
Huge in Australia, India, the UK. It's probably our third biggest sport. So it's
Okay.
like it's quite a it's a big deal. And I was working with Sky Sports and Channel 5, which are obviously two big names in the space.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
just as a runner, I was bringing teas and coffees to the talent, and I was delivering meals. Um, but like the best story I have from that period of my life was that at one point in time, I was stood in a room which had Elizabeth Hurley, Mick Jagger, Shane Warne, Michael Vaughan, all huge names in like everything, like in the world.
I
And
had
I
a
have
huge crush on Elizabeth Hurley when I was a kid when I watched Bedazzled with Brendan
every man
Fraser.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, every man did. And I was just sitting there having a conversation with Mick Jagger about my university degree, and he was telling me he was about to drop a brand new track soon. And it was aimed at my era, of my age group. So I'm going to have to look out for it. And that was when he had his like big comeback, like 6 months after. It's such a surreal
Wow.
like story I have in my back pocket.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome.
But basically I came out of that, and I was working in television. When I left university, I ended up working in television, TV drama. I did some pickups for the Tarzan movie, just as a runner driver. And I did a couple of series, like Sword and Sandals, we call them, series.
Yeah.
And at that point, I very much realized I really hated working in television and film, and I really wanted to work in sports. And I kind of took
Yeah.
off from there.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you if it was always like, did you always know this path was the one you wanted to take, or did you just like stumble into it?
No, I always knew. I was super driven from a really young age. I was like, I'm going to work in television. I changed my school to do it. I went to university to do it. And actually, it's something quite nice about knowing that the things you set out to do actually were achievable. At no point did I want to be on camera. That kind of came
Okay.
later. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to be a runner or a researcher in a sports kind of unit in the
Yeah.
UK. I wanted to be a rugby researcher, which is like the person that goes and gets all the stats and clips the footage and feeds it all to
Oh,
the more
sick.
important people.
So during that time where you just were running around and you first did your first gigs and stuff like that, what were some of the biggest thing you learned from that time?
Oh, that's really interesting. I sat in on a lot of edits. Like that was a big thing when I was coming through, was like watching people who are really good at what they do. And just like I spent hours, like I did so much work experience. And when you're work experience, you can't do a whole lot of hands-on stuff, especially in Wales. They're quite particular about that. So hours and hours of watching how people edit, and edit specifically at the early stage of digital media,
Mhm.
which was actually really interesting looking back on it. We were making stuff for the Welsh Rugby Union's YouTube. Um, and it was all quite done like news like at that stage. Like it's only in recent times that they've decided it needs an entire new kind of format.
Yeah.
But that in particular was really interesting, because it changed how, having come from that underwater videography role where I was editing a lot, that really pulled it through to a more modern at the time style of editing,
Yeah.
and how to make short, engaging content. And I think that still, like as a presenter, having that background has really helped, because I know that no one wants to hear me waffle for 15 to 20 seconds, I'd say, is your max. No one wants to hear me go on for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, because that's the third of your end product. And now we're in the digital media age. In fact, it's even less than that. It's
Yeah.
probably like 3/4. So like early things like that, and
Yeah.
understanding production in depth. I mean, that was just the start of my production journey. I've been in producing and production for over 10 years, but
Yeah.
that's really helped me where I am today, understand the end product and what the other people in the team are doing and require from you in the role that I do now. So that
Yeah.
was a particularly big thing, I think.
I think it's awesome when you're at a certain point in your career where you do kind of like the end goal job that you have now, but you've been through the trenches. You've seen the behind the scenes and what goes on in pre-production, post-production, production, and then so I think it makes you an even better at what you're doing now, knowing all these things and having gone through that at early ages.
Or more of a nightmare, because I kind of do have a good idea of how it all works. I used to be the person in charge, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. So at such a young age when you entered that industry, did you have like a mentor or a key figure that helped you guide you in the early days, or did you just learn everything on your own?
I leaned heavily on producers, I would say, over any other kind of, because at that stage I wasn't thinking about reporting or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I leaned heavily on producers. There was a really great team at a really tiny production company called Sports Media Services.
Yeah.
And I ended up living with one of the APs, one of the younger producers, for about 4 years after university, or 3 years after university. So we spent a lot of time like talking about work.
Yeah.
But his dad owned the company, and his dad looked after us like really
Yeah.
well as interns, I always thought, and gave us lots of opportunity. He put a camera in my hand professionally for the first time outside of the videography job. And he got me into a production company who I ended up working for 6 years. He got
Yeah.
my first foot in the door there by introducing me to the Welsh team. Um, and I ended up working on the Autumn Nations. I was now the Autumn Nations. It was the Autumn Internationals rugby. And actually,
Yeah.
ultimately, those guys in that tiny little production house probably kickstarted my entire rugby career. Like, look, actually, I hadn't even thought about that before, but that's probably a big part of where it came from.
Yeah.
We used to do college rugby for the Welsh language. So I don't speak Welsh. I live in Wales, but I don't speak Welsh. It's called rugby pawb. I have to put on a Welsh accent when I say it.
Okay.
But
I've never heard Welsh before.
Bore da. So I used to floor manage that show for them. It was a 3-camera setup. It was super tiny, but it was like age group kids. And I would make sure the teams came in and out on time, make sure the cameras are ready to go, loop them into the broadcast, everything floor managery,
Yeah.
which was actually an incredible experience, because then when I ended up going to BT Sport and we ended up broadcasting rugby union in America for the first time, I went out because I had that skill set as a hybrid producer, floor manager, and I was part of the team that brought Premiership rugby to the US for the very first time for 2 years in a row. So like,
Wow.
it's funny how those little early experiences really led to
Yeah.
like much bigger, I'm going to call them life moments. I don't think I appreciate them at the time as life moments, but
Yeah.
it's quite a big part of the history of the sport of domestic rugby in England,
Yeah.
which is quite cool.
Yeah, this is pretty sick. So that kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask after, which is like, what was the transition like from the early gigs to covering larger events and working with major networks?
It always felt there are a couple of baptisms of fire, right? At every point in your life, you're going to have like 1 or 2 moments where you go, oh my gosh, that just happened. And the first one was getting an off the cuff opportunity due to illness to cover the Anglo-Welsh Cup final as a reporter. It was my first reporter role. It was my first reporter role live. And I crashed and burned. It is so terrifying. I'd worked behind the scenes in live, and one of the real things you realize when you start in television, and I know it sounds really stupid, but live genuinely means live, like everything syncs up. So the camera's cut because a person pushes the button, because the person on the floor is doing that exact thing, because the camera's in the right place. And if all of those things don't link up, then that's when you have a crap show. That's when the production's off. So
Yeah.
when live is very live. And when the director goes cue, you're like, your voice coming out of here is, blasted around every output that it's going out on.
Yeah.
And I got through all the early interviews. That was totally fine. But it was all post-match, where it's all reactive. And I think I was in fight and flight the entire time that I was watching the game. So I'm not actually sure that anything of the game filtered into my brain. And then I just had one of those, I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this. I almost guarantee like the girls have, like Lauren Khalil and Belle and all that. But when you are too focused on doing the job as opposed to listening to the person, and maybe you've preset some questions, or you have a vague idea of where you want to go with an interview, and then you can't find that in your brain when the time comes, you end up in this weird brain cycle that's going, oh shit, I can't remember. and you're thinking too much about you can't remember than listening to the person and just reacting like a normal person. And I had one of those moments, like, because it was the first time I'd ever done it. I didn't know how I was going to react, and I was just like, I can't remember anything about what I'm going to do. Like, gone. And I burbled some words at this poor rugby player, and then my absolute godsend of a producer came into my ear and fed me a question, and it just calmed everything down. I just repeated it, we got through it, and I just settled, and we just got on with it, and it was great. And it led to a load more opportunity, but geez, that was a time.
I always felt for you guys. So the funny thing is, actually, my mom worked in media for soccer, for football, for 25 years in a big TV channel in France called Canal Plus.
I know Canal Plus. Or Plus.
Yeah, Canal Plus. Yeah, so she was in the media truck.
Yeah.
And she was working with the director and like with like her little chrono, like her little timer.
So she was what in England we'd call a like a PA, or they've got another name in America, but basically responsible for the timings of the show.
Yeah, and everything. Yeah. And my stepdad was a football presenter in France as well. And so
very cool.
I was always brought on to the games, and like I was brought on into like the truck where all the screens were. And I saw like on the screens, like the reporters on the field and everything. And I was always like so impressed.
Yeah, the trucks are amazing. Like, and how it all works. It's amazing.
Yeah,
question.
It's crazy. Yes.
Do they clap French directors when they leave the truck?
No.
That's the rumor that goes around in rugby union, that French directors get clapped off the truck.
Really?
Well, because because it's always so creative, French television. It's completely different to every other type of television.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've never seen that with my own eyes. Maybe it happens sometimes.
Maybe just the really big games, like the top
maybe
final.
When it's like a huge team effort and like there's like it was stressful and like challenge management during live and everything. Maybe it is a team effort for sure. So, sports journalism is quite a competitive field. How did you stand out and carve your own path?
I have no idea. Not a clue.
You're just being you.
Yeah. I've always kind of said it's probably a large amount of being at the right place, right time, a little bit of luck, but actually there's also a huge amount of work that goes into it. I'd probably be doing a bit of a disservice to myself if I just said it was luck. I think it's when opportunity meets hard work at the right moment 100%. And you get the go ahead by people who are much, further up the ladder than you. And their trust to be able to run with certain projects. I do a lot of like behind the scenes stuff as well to make sure that like my name's out there and that I know it sounds really stupid, but like reinventing your relevance, like you've got to constantly like think about what's coming next. There's always curveballs with television, right? It just requires one broadcaster change, which I've gone through now a couple of times to wipe an entire year's worth of work for you. And then it's not just about work, it's about paying your mortgage. So it's actually, it's like mildly terrifying to be a part of that. Like business changes impact your life so much. But
for sure.
Yeah, it's, I guess it's just hard work and tenacity.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, there's a lot of people that are very talented, but they won't have the wit. They won't have the connection with the people that helps them, even though they're really talented and won't get those opportunities. And on the other hand, you'll have very hard workers, people who they can talk to people very easily, move around, but they don't have the talent. So I think it's and then some people are very talented, but they don't work hard. So I think it is a healthy mix of hard work, opportunity, and talent, because there is also, I think, a side of things where you can be very talented and work hard,
and still not get the opportunity. You need the opportunity too, right?
100%.
I'm after this, I'm literally heading out to have a meeting with a young girl who is really interested in this space, and I do this quite a lot. Chat to youngsters coming through, and they all want to know how, why, like what were the building blocks in place? Because the thing is with this career is that there is no direct line. You can't just be like, I'm going to go to university, then I'm going to do this degree, then I'm going to go to this place and get my training, and then I'm going to go here. It's so fickle. about who gets opportunity and who doesn't. And it normally relies or comes down to one or two people on a very specific team and very specific roles. I think the biggest bit of advice in that regard that I ever give is you've got to know what you're covering. Like I've got quite lucky that I've covered a real breadth of sport. And sometimes I have gone in not knowing as much as, say, the other stuff I cover. But you've just got to know that sport inside out and be confident talking about it and talking to people about it and knowing what questions to ask.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why talking about this young girl you're going to see very soon, like that's why I do this podcast as well. Obviously to have conversations with friends and stuff, but also talk shop and give an insight into what our life is as media as broadly and what goes into it. And I've had some feedback from people like who are just started video making or journalism or whatever and listen to these episodes. And that's why I wanted to do that. What's like a behind the scene aspect of your job that people might not realize or appreciate, you feel?
Ooh. Having to do my tax return every year, that's a pain in the ass. I mean,
fair enough.
It's a nightmare. No one prepares you for the length of time and the amount of weight that takes up, like, in your life. No, but like more specifically on the television side, I think I know everyone says this. I think it's just like the go-to answer for this, but there's this common misconception that it's super glamorous work. And actually most of the time you're not. You're in the bowels of the stadium in concrete rooms trying to piece together storylines, working with producers, late night meetings, like even if we just go to the games, we're up at, so we had to meet at 6:30 to 7, which means for most average females, you're getting up an hour and a half before so you can do hair and makeup. Your own, by the way. We don't have the budget to have a hair and makeup artist anymore. And then you have a brief meeting over breakfast, then you're live from 8 onwards, then you finish at maybe like 7:30 p.m. By the time all the truck finishes, it's like 8:30. So you're doing your evening meetings at like 9:30 at night. And you just do that for like 4 or 5 solid days. It's not, you've got to want to work hard, because and you also can't switch off. There isn't like a down period in a live broadcast. You're always on because if they need something goes wrong, you're the backup, you're the fill, so you've got to constantly be watching, constantly be analyzing storylines, waiting for your next hit, but also be aware that you are a safety mechanism as well. It's really interesting. And you've always got something in your ear, right? You've always got the director and the truck in your ear. So it's just constantly going. And getting used to that is a real skill.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I wonder how difficult that could be for people that have like attention disorder or ADHD and stuff like that, like, because there's so many streams of thoughts going on at the same time. Maybe it helps actually with the ADHD. I don't know.
I can't help that.
Yeah.
But I agree. I always put it down to, because so the director is in your ear. Sometimes you can hear them counting the cameras. Sometimes you just hear your producer. It depends how scaled up the production is. If it's just the producer, then it's great because it's just a key in, key out, and he just pops in periodically. But I'm also listening to commentary in there as well. So say up to 3 or 4 strands of different voices in your ear, plus you talking, whether that's on the microphone to a person or to someone else. So you have to be able to tune out the stuff that's relevant to you. And I always say that the reason that I got good at this is because as much as I adore my mum, she talks through every single film that I've ever watched in my entire life. And I've got really good at completely narrowing out whatever's happening around me so I can watch my TV show.
Yeah.
And I think that's some weird little childhood thing like that has really helped me today.
Focus must be like a big thing. I can't even read in a place where there's even just one person breathing next to me. So like I could not do that. So when you're like on air and you're about to interview a high profile athlete, how do you mentally prepare for that before going on live?
I don't think there is a mental preparation.
No? I
think the more you think about it and the more the more you allow that to stress you out, because this person is like whoever it is, I've interviewed all the biggest athletes in the CrossFit space now and a lot of big world athletes. And at no point did I ever, I would say there's more pressure on a person whose time is hard to come by again, which does apply to these high profile people. But if this is our only opportunity to get an interview, it doesn't matter whether you are, Matt Fraser, Tia Claire Toomey, or you're, someone I know personally, say, like, Lucy McGonigal or Lucy Campbell or anything like, someone who I could phone up and be like, I'm really sorry, really messed that up. Can you please come back?
Yeah.
But it's almost like the stakes for the broadcast are higher than the person you're interviewing. And I think if you get sucked into the, oh my God, this is a really big name, ultimately your interview will be worse. You'll be more nervous. You'll overthink the questions you're asking them. And we're like, everyone is a real person. Like everyone is like, and I think sometimes that can get lost through a screen. But when you're like interacting with people, like everyone's like got a job to do and everyone knows their job in that situation. Like I'd love to say that setting up for an interview is like this supernatural real thing, but once you've done it, certain high profile stars, once they've done it a couple of like 10 times, that there's a system, and the likelihood is a bit different in CrossFit perhaps, but in other sports every journalist asks the same question because they're the same editorially relevant questions. So there's just a kind of almost like a game you play where they know their job, you know your job. There's no need to get overawed by the occasion. We're all here to make sure it gets done. But that's the beauty of these smaller sports, right? Because they're not at that stage. It's not like going to a rugby interview or a football interview where they're like, yeah, we played really well as a team. I really want to support my teammates. They did great today. It's actually, there's a lot more raw emotion and a lot more realness and a lot more humanness, which is probably why I love working in the kind of the niche sports so much more.
Yeah, for sure. That must be it's good to have. I think it's nice that you have such a wide variety of things to work on. Then that gives you space to breathe in between the two, and I think it's really cool. So I know like the media industry, at least on my end, and I'm sure it's the same for journalists and reporters as well. The media industry can be quite relentless. How do you handle when there's pressure or criticism? Like if you experience and you're like, what's your mindset? And like if you have some mindfulness stuff or stuff that helps you stay grounded, or
I think the like pressure, criticism, they're kind of different things. Because the criticism tends to be very external, and actually you can avoid a lot of that. If it's criticism from a director or producer or someone who's, directly responsible for my performance, then 100% I'm paying attention to that, because that's how you improve. It's no different to being an athlete. You want to find out what are the worst things that you offer as a presenter, and you need someone to tell you that. You quite often don't see it in yourself. So, that kind of feedback's invaluable, and you learn from it and you get better next time. External criticism you can avoid. You don't go to the comments, you don't hunt out Reddit threads, you don't, you just leave that to one side.
So you don't read any of the comments when you post
No,
stuff?
never. No.
Okay.
It's different on Instagram. No one's going to come to my Instagram and hammer me, I don't think. But I'm not going to go hunting on the CrossFit YouTube,
Yeah, okay, on the broad, of course.
Way to really undermine confidence.
For sure.
So yeah,
people get sucked in those rabbit holes. I don't know how.
Oh, you do, and it's my biggest piece of advice to anyone who does live streaming, because there's just no filter on the internet. People say whatever they want, and actually, it can get really damaging if you take it to heart too much. And then, I mean, pressure-wise is again a slightly different thing. I think that comes with experience, how to handle pressure. I remember my first open announcement. That's probably the most I felt it, right? This big thing in the world. It's really funny that it was an open announcement that did this, not like working at an FA Cup final or anything like that. But the open announcement was very stressful for me because I just wanted to do it well. So you feel the weight of it, like the responsibility of the role you have. And I had a lot of names to remember, which was my biggest concern, was forgetting someone's name when we were live. But actually, there was on the two announcements I've done, actually, Yami on the first one I did in Reykjavik, which was a little bit easier because it was just a feed in. But Yami, BKG, Annie's coach over in Reykjavik, he came up to me and was just like, how'd you do? He asked me this kind of similar question. He was like, I've got some techniques I give the athletes. So maybe you should try these. And it was just a couple of like deep breath kind of kind of calming techniques. And I was like, how wonderful of him to take the time to notice that maybe I was feeling the pressure slightly, come over and offer that information and support. But B, that's something I now do ahead of every single broadcast before I go live, because I have a habit of going out like a rocket in CrossFit and in broadcast. But you can tell I'm nervous if I'm speaking a lot faster than my usual cadence. So he just said, take one big deep breath in, and then one big 6-second deep breath out. Drop your shoulders, and then get set, ready to go. And I will actually do that before every single time before a camera comes to me. And it just slows everything down a little bit and means I don't go and rush through my hits.
I wanted to ask you, if so that's more of a breathing exercise, but I know all of us, we all have our little habits. I don't know if you're superstitious, is there little things, stuff you wear or to keep on yourself, or just a favorite t-shirt or something you do to give yourself some confidence or something? Or?
I am pretty laid back, to be honest. I don't have anything like that. I think I have a really good support system here. Obviously my husband, who's sat over there just hating the fact I'm talking about myself for this long. I've got my affiliate. They're amazing, the affiliate's amazing. And you can always rely on those guys to bring you smack down to earth if you need it.
Yes. Fair enough.
And they've been a massive support system through life in general. Life's, especially when you get to your 30s, life's not smooth sailing anymore. There's so many real life things to deal with, and the support from the affiliate and from our family in general is literally what keeps you grounded and keeps you sane.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's for everybody. When I look at all the kids who burnt out, like Mal or Haley when they were younger, if I look at Victor Hoffer, he has such an amazing support system. Regis and Audrey, and Maya, they're just all such great people. His older coach Luke and Claudia and everything. And so when you talk to the kid, he's just so grounded and so calm, and I think that makes a huge difference. So for sure.
Have you met a nicer person than Victor Hoffer? He's just a wonderful guy. Wonderful person.
The sweetest, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your affiliate a little bit later, but before that, I wanted to ask what was not necessarily a transition, because you still do both, but when did you get introduced to the fitness side of things of your job, opposite to rugby? And
so I was just starting my sideline reporting in rugby, and I felt like a lot of what I did was very stilted. I was very completely the opposite to what I am now. Let's put it that way. I was very stiff. I'd pre-sorted all my questions in my head, and I was just delivering lines. And I was like, I need to be more fluid. And there was a presenter at the time, still is, called Craig Doyle. He's literally just done the Super Bowl. He's a bit of a legend. But the reason I love his presenting style is because he reacts to everything that's going on around him. He's super relaxed. He's fun. He interacts with his people in a really human way. And it wasn't straight up tie, suit, boring. It was very engaging. So I always used him as a bit of a marker. Same with another woman called Sarah Elgin. Those two in rugby, they were kind of the ideal of how to present for me. And I was like, okay, how do I get that out of myself? How do I become more relaxed in this situation? And the answer I came up with was to start a podcast. So I started, and I didn't want to do it in rugby because of conflict of interest. So I started a CrossFit podcast. That was in 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
I'd been in the space since 2013. So I'd been in the space for 4 years. At the time, I had a coach who was super larger than life out there, really, really into it, and loved talking. And that coach was Josh Alchama, who went on to win the CrossFit Games with CrossFit Invictus.
That's sick.
So me and Josh, I took him for coffee. I was like, Josh, I want to start a podcast, and I think you'd be a great co-host. Are you up for this? So me and Josh Alchama, back in the day, started a podcast, and that brought us to the International Functional Fitness Federation World Championships in London. That we were one of their principal sponsors, and we did all of the media for them. pro bono, obviously, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically what we did, and that opened the door. That was at the same time Sanctionals was announced,
Yeah.
and that opened the door to me meeting all of the people that would later start my CrossFit career. So,
Yeah.
Ollie Mansbridge and Stephen Fawcett, who now is the coach of Victor Hoffer at Hard Work Pays Off. Ollie Mansbridge is I think the European CrossFit affiliate manager.
Okay.
He's somewhere in the affiliate system at CrossFit.
Mhm.
And they gave me lots of different opportunities in the space. I did a lot of stuff for Steve's coaching program, like a lot of media for his coaching program with Ollie. He was like, "Oh, I'm running this competition. It's called Strength and Depth. It's going to be a sanctional, and we need a sideline reporter." I was like, "Oh my God, is my life just perfect?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I will absolutely love to do that.
Yeah.
So
Did you
that's how I
see?
got my foot in the door with the broadcast team,
Okay.
basically.
Did you see it straight away as like another job, like real job opportunity, or was at that time still
No.
something in between the lines of hobby, part-time thing, or?
That was 5,000% hobby. Like
Okay.
I wasn't getting paid for any of it at the early days. Like that was
Yeah.
just
Okay.
like how amazing, like this is a thing I do, and
Yeah.
now I get to
Yeah.
talk about it as in like it's a job, like I'm
Yeah.
playing at a job.
Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
and actually, it
So
didn't really become super real until everything went back in house with CrossFit. So
yeah.
like sanctionals were amazing and gave me really incredible opportunity to meet people and get to know the worldwide CrossFit
Yeah.
world. Um, Highlighting happy birthday to Matt Fraser when he turned 30 in front of a room full of people. He loved that. He
That's
didn't.
awesome.
He hated that. um, but that like
So that was the
basically
transition.
maybe a year, yeah, maybe like 8 months later.
Yeah.
So like a good period of time later, once sanctionals went back in house, and I thought my fun was kind of over.
Yeah.
I got a call from CrossFit, from their production company, and basically saying, would I be interested in doing some digital stuff for them, that they'd come across my profile. I'd sent in like a demo reel and being like, because I'm like, again, tenacious, like I'm not just going to sit back and wait for things to come to me. I'm like,
Yes.
oh, I hear you're doing
Proactive.
something with CrossFit. Like, can I send you my
Yeah.
demo reel?
Yeah.
So they eventually contacted me, and it was like the coolest day ever. I can remember where I was. I was driving back from the airport, I think it was. I just
Mhm.
passed the final like roundabout to my home at the time, and I was driving past McDonald's, and then I got a call from CrossFit, and I was like, "Bah, give me 5 minutes so I can park."
It's so funny that like you were near a fast food restaurant to like start something in fitness.
Yeah, like I can
um,
picture it so clearly, because that was again quite another key moment thing for me, because
yeah, for sure.
it almost professionalized CrossFit in my world,
Yeah,
rather than it just
exactly.
being a hobby. I was something like I
Yeah.
was working for them. It was really cool.
Yeah, and that was exactly my question when you felt it really transitioned from a hobby to like more work, basically.
Yeah, it was
Um,
that.
but you do so much. You cover Hyroxes, cycling, rugby, fitness in all shapes and forms. How how do you balance that? Is there something you do more of? Like, what's your?
I mean, I spoke tonight about like the need to reinvent yourself regularly, and I think that's what's led me to do a few sports. I would have defined myself as a cycling reporter 4 years ago, 3 years ago, because that is
Yeah,
all I did,
yeah,
and then all it took was a change of broadcaster. And with a change of broadcaster, when you change broadcaster, they don't take talent, where I'm associated with one company, the new company isn't going to go, oh, we'll have the other company's person.
yeah,
So very abruptly, I had to really reevaluate my identity as a journalist and a reporter.
yeah,
Um, but the beauty of it is I have such a big backlog of that and cycling knowledge that I still do get cycling jobs. It's
yeah,
just not my entire portfolio anymore. And that's
yeah,
kind of basically what's happened everywhere, really. Like rugby union was my life for 8 years. And then I left rugby to go freelance and do a few different jobs. So a lot of the rugby kind of went by the wayside, but I ended up working in women's rugby, which I still love. And
yeah,
again, that's just a little bit more periodic, like that's not, I'm not attached to a channel for a season. They just
mhm,
bring me in periodically throughout the year.
Yeah.
But I have that huge base from when I was producing it, and doing
Yeah.
sideline in the men's game. So that's kind of how it's worked. And where I am now is actually it'd probably be to a detriment if I took on a whole season of something that was really intensive.
Hmm.
Because right now I can balance a Hyrox season, a CrossFit season, and um, periodically go and cover cycling, go and do the women's rugby, and
Okay.
like it allows me a really nice variation. And like football was something that came into my life last year in a bigger way. So I get a
Okay.
lot of like filler football jobs, which is
Yeah.
great. So it's all like fan interaction stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but at like Wembley Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur, like really big games.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Um,
really cool.
but that
Yeah.
variation I think is better for me. It keeps it interesting, and
Yeah.
I never feel like I'm missing out. Like I think
Yeah.
when you get
Okay.
when you're in one sport, there's a safety there. And actually,
Yeah.
to be honest, if someone turned around and went, "Oh, you can earn your yearly salary just
Yeah.
doing this one sport, and in the gaps you can have your time off,"
Yeah.
then what a dream, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
ultimate job. But they just don't really exist in our world.
No.
So
Yeah.
like, there's
Yeah.
no need for companies to pay you year round
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like
For sure.
12 weekends, 20 like a year. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Exactly. So you've covered so much in sports in all areas. I'd love to know. Can be rugby, can be in cycling, Hyrox, whatever. If you have some most surreal and unforgettable moments that you have in your career. Like to give you an example, I was interviewing Nikki Razier, and she was telling me about the moment she was interviewing Annie Thor's daughter when she podiumed again, because
Yeah.
Nikki was pregnant and Annie just got out of pregnancy and all that stuff, and that was pretty surreal for her. Do you have like moments like that you can remember on the top of your head?
Oh, that was a really beautiful moment. I remember watching that interview. It was stunning.
Yeah.
Um, I guess there was a full circle. Like, if we're going CrossFit, there was definitely a full circle moment where I'm interviewing Josh Archarma, my podcast co-host, as he won the CrossFit Games. Like that was,
Can you still find
that's
those
great.
episodes, by the way?
I probably do. Yeah, I probably do still
Okay,
have
okay.
them.
Okay.
I can't remember who we spoke to now. I have to we focused it on English CrossFit. So
Okay.
Mickey Smith, if you know Mickey Smith, we definitely did one with him.
Doesn't
We did
ring a
one
bell.
with Andy Edwards, who coached Jamie Green. We did one
Okay.
with Andy. I did one with
Yeah.
Shrunky and with Elliot Simmons. Like it was a real
Okay.
British CrossFit vibe.
Okay, gotcha.
But in terms of like wow moments, like in mountain biking, it's hard to explain the atmosphere you get at those events.
Yeah.
And there was one where we were in France for the World Championships, and the podium was 3 Frenchmen, but it was a last minute run that like saved everything. And in fact, this happened in Canada as well, where a Canadian won it. It tends to be if someone wins it from the home country, everyone goes wild. But basically, the entire hill, like we're talking a mountain, all descends to the finish bowl. And then they all like knocked down the hoardings, and then they all kind of came into the middle, and they all had flares. All of the riders and all of the bikes were in the air being thrown around. We got one of our guys like going into the like melee trying to grab
Yeah.
a rider for an interview, while I'm just stood on the side like watching this all unfold, like the chaos. There was similarly the Canadian one. There's a video of me interviewing Finn Isles, who just won his first World Cup. There's a huge backstory about his like idol passing away, and him being the first Canadian to do it again at the same track. Blah, it's a really
Yeah.
emotive day. His debut win, and I'm interviewing him like this. We have maybe got the space of this podcast studio, loose term. It's my front room. And there's people all around us screaming at him, mostly like, "Oh my God, well done." People are banging the backboards, and this backboard is falling over on him. I'm like holding the backboard up, doing this interview. We're like this far away from each other, like trying to get this done for broadcast. And it was an amazing moment. Like it was incredible moment. But
I want to look that up later.
oh
my goodness.
there's one early one that I don't know why it sticks with me so much, but again, early career through university, I was working as a floor manager for an events company who I now work for as a presenter, which is a really nice full circle thing. And my job was to lead the choirs around the pitch at the Millennium Stadium during the Six Nations.
Yeah.
And anyway, I remember when Wales won their first Grand Slam, and it was my first really big job. And I was
Yeah.
just loving the fact I was there. And Wales won this Grand Slam, and there was the stage, and there was the explosions of the cannons, and they've got the trophy up here, and basically there's just it's a David Guetta Titanium, and it's just
Maybe.
well, I'm not very good at music, and it's just like reverbing around the Millennium Stadium, which is the most incredible venue for sport if you've not experienced it. And I'm just stood in the middle of the pitch, and all of these professional rugby players have just won a really big thing, and there's streamers everywhere, all over me, all on the ground, and I'm just like, how have I ended up here? This is insane. Like
Yeah,
it's a
crazy.
cool, and I was like, I would have been 22 or something. Like I was like,
Yeah.
how is this my life?
Yeah, exactly. And then the song like I'm bulletproof,
Yeah.
nothing to lose.
It's so
Oh
good.
my
But
goodness.
like you regularly have those moments. I really hope that everyone in my position still has those moments where like everything you set out to kind of achieve, that
Yeah.
like when it happens, you just sit there and you're like, how is this my life? How has this been cultivated?
That's awesome. Do you ever get imposter syndrome, or are you pretty confident to
Oh
where you
no,
got?
all the
Yeah?
time. All
Okay.
the time. I'm like, like Alona Mar, the women's rugby player the Olympian, who's like, she's like, oh no, I never get imposter syndrome because I worked really hard to be here. I was like, oh Alona, I've worked quite hard to be here too, girl, and I do not have that.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah.
Like I second guess, like I don't know, it's not that I don't think I've worked hard to be there or that I'm the best person for the job, because quite often I do think that, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever 100% certain. I don't know. It's a bit
Yeah,
of a weird one. It's not like I'm not certain in myself, because I am. I know I'm very confident in delivering a job and like in doing what I want to do. But I probably
yeah.
always think, oh, surely there must be someone better than I am, or
And I
surely
think
surely they made a mistake. But I always think they've got the wrong Lauren. Like me and Lauren Khalil are
yeah,
really good friends, and
yeah.
I'm always like, are we sure they didn't mean to hire Lauren Khalil and they just got it wrong, and now we're just on a
Yeah.
roll?
No, but I think it's really healthy to have some level of imposter syndrome, in the sense that I feel like whatever the stage of your career you're at and how professional you are, I think have that little humbling sensation pushes you to always want to better yourself. Because I think if you never get to these little moments of insecurity or imposter syndrome, then you can just settle into what you already know and not really reach to renew yourself or improve yourself. So I think it's always healthy to have some of that. Um,
Yeah. And I think it means you never relax into what you're experiencing, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you just need to look at my notes before an event to know there's no relax.
That links me to something that I just have a few questions left. I don't want to take too
You're all
much of
good.
your time. Just about like your job. How do you balance interviews, like keeping interviews engaging, but also making sure you get meaningful answers from the athletes or the guests?
Yeah, that was actually one of the big things when I first came into the CrossFit space that a lot of people spoke to me about. They were like, we need more the questions need to be like stronger. We
Yeah,
need to learn more. We need to change it up. And I was like, look, 90% of the stuff that I do is actually about the human as opposed to the sport.
mhm,
And that tends to be how my questioning flows. I think sometimes maybe I'm a bit too human over sport on occasion. In that I felt that was maybe the case at the semi-finals this year, where I could have asked a little bit more about the workouts and a little bit less about their general lives. But
yeah,
so it does work both ways. It's finding a happy balance there. But I spend a huge amount of time prior to turning up on site. I've interviewed all of these guys off site, pretty much, give or take, the
yeah,
ones I can get hold of before I even reach um, sideline.
yeah,
So the beauty of the smaller sports, and the same goes for Hyrox. Like me and the Hyrox athletes are like, that's even less than CrossFit. We are friends. We hang out. Like I
yeah,
know a huge amount about their lives and what they're going through in training at the moment and their connections and
yeah,
but I spend a lot of time getting to know that. And I'm not alone in that. The commentary will do exactly the same. We will
yeah,
send out questionnaires or get people on the phone, chat to them on Skype. So before I even ask the first question, I've got a page in a notebook that has all of their physical details. Then I have all of their kind of personal details, and then I will like have bullet points of like talking points. So I know that if Yellow Hoster wins a certain event, that this is the flow of the interview. And then I'll normally leave a gap for one question that is sport specific, something that I've watched.
Yeah.
And that's my approach to a lot of it.
Yeah. So you kind of have this. I just finished rewatching Sherlock on BBC. You know.
Fun fact: I've worked on Sherlock.
No way.
Yeah,
me too. Actually, I did some subtitles for BBC France.
Amazing. I delivered Benedict Cumberbatch coffee.
No way. He's one of my favorite British actor. Him and Martin Freeman.
That was very much there was a bit of a battle of those two who could be more famous on set. Benedict always
was
won.
it? Oh my goodness.
I mean,
that's
we're
cool.
talking years ago, like years and years and years.
Yeah. But it's so funny because my first, so I went to film school and I quit after 2 years because I wanted to like start working. And my first gigs were just unpaid internship jobs for small TV companies. And my first ever thing was doing some translation subtitles for that, and also some like other stuff. But yeah, so I just talk about Sherlock because he has a mind palace. And now I'm just picturing like how you are, like when you think about all these details, all the like the past, the future.
Tumbleweed.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
No, I don't like. I admire the people that just have this brain that can just retain all of its information. I don't have that. That's why I have my notebooks, because I do not have that.
Yeah. Okay.
I have
so
to.
You do have your
live
notes in front of you.
No, not when I'm interviewing. Like.
Oh yeah.
Like, but I will have them as a reference point.
Yeah.
So I'll like reference point, like some stuff I remember, but when you've got 40 athletes in a field, it's kind of,
fair enough.
That's not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh my God, like, you have to remember everything.
I do have I have my notebook that has got a huge amount of prep in it. I treat it like revising for an exam. That's the best way to describe it. So I'll go through the notes I have. I'll do internet research and I'll write out a pretty page, kind of like a exam notes flip card. And then I have it to reference if I need it, but hopefully some of it's filtered in. That's my general approach. Yeah. But yeah, the people who can just pull stats, like Brian and those guys who can just pull stats out of their brain like this. I'm like, that's not my style. But I would say that actually it allows me to probably the generalist elements of what my role requires. Yeah. That probably suits that better. You don't want to get bogged down in stats when you're sideline. You want to ask an open question to allow them to give a viable answer. My biggest bugbear is, in fact, it needs to be the reporters at a minimum to give maximum time to the athlete. And that's always been like the goal, right? Like how little can I speak to get the answer that's required to allow him or her the most airtime and to present them in the best way possible to the world. And to get as much, because we're likely to only speak to a person once in a weekend. So it's like in those 3 questions, how can I best present this person so he or she can get their story across to the people watching at home? And that's what we all aspire to do.
What do you do when you interview someone and on the opposite side of that, you get nothing?
Panic.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's when it becomes a bit more of a back and forth. Like
some athletes.
Luckily, yeah, they do.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna say specific names, but I know some of them. It's like, wow, you're getting nothing.
Most people are really good, but
true. So often, no, for sure. But I'm talking so just like more people shy, who are shy. And
100%. And that's for me to get the best out of them, right? Like that is a big part of my job. So, if they're uncomfortable, you try something different. And then I guess my experience of doing a lot of live stuff, stuff in stadiums, like the kind of stuff I do for Rogue, I do in stadiums around the country in England for different sports. And you get used to like the repartee and the one-word answers and the ability to come back with something quickly. One of the early bits of advice I got given was always have a question in your back pocket. So I have my back pocket question, like the one that if push comes to shove, it's applicable in any circumstance. and you can
Yeah.
just drop it in to give yourself a moment to compose,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the athlete a moment to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I think it's you're just great at doing that. And obviously, like we've seen each other at some events, but I truly witnessed that at Rogue when I just saw you work, and I was like,
It's
this woman is just a
mental.
powerhouse, and like it was so funny.
It
It
was
was
so funny.
so funny. Like
How did
the
they let us
public,
do that?
it was, oh my god, I was just cracking up laughing. I was like, what is going
It was
on?
so good. That was one of the
Oh,
best working weekends because it was just wild. I was like, no sport in the
oh,
world would allow me to do this, Like
no.
like the beer races and the drunk people singing
Yeah.
and the
Oh my
innuendo. It was
goodness.
like permanent innuendo. It was so good.
I was just
It
like
was like,
working and listening, and it was just hilarious. I loved it.
yeah, I loved it. I really hope they have me back because that was like such a funny weekend.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to do more of like, see, I it's almost like it was so unique to that one. Like it worked because most of the audience was Scottish and they
Yeah.
love like that is their personality in
Yeah.
a broad general sense. Like they are a bit cheeky, they
Yeah.
like a booze.
Yeah.
So that really helped people relax into the flow
Yeah.
of the interviewing thing. And then I think because it was like such a kind of happy event, it all
Yeah.
fed in really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure you could replicate that around the
No.
globe.
And by the end of the weekend, I think like involving the audience like that, it really makes you feel, because during those 3 days, even though there's gonna be some rotation, it's mostly the same people watching. And so
Yeah.
it really felt at the end of the weekend that we're like just one big family, the athletes and the audience, like kind of like in this together, opposite to just an audience watching and then,
Yeah.
focus on the athletes. So I think that was awesome.
I mean, how amazing that you could say you were on the Rogue Invitational turf, like the people who came down and did stupid games and
Yeah.
the guy who got proposed, like the guy who
Yeah.
proposed.
Yeah,
That was me and Heber of the Buttery Bros.
yeah.
Heber came up to me, he's like, "Can we do this?" I was like, "Give me a day. Like, I
Yeah.
want to make a proposal happen."
Yeah, I love it. It's like when they give audience members in the NBA like a free throw or just
Yeah.
like stuff like that. I think it's involving the public in this fun way is really cool. It's just maybe for security, it's more like stressful. Like
And making sure we got off on time before the athletes walked out.
Yeah, exactly. We're reaching towards the end. I just got a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. The sports industry is evolving rapidly in journalism as well. Like where do you see sports journalism heading in the next few years?
Online. We're pretty
Yeah.
much already there, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at way more bite-sized content. Just the nature of having phones in palms. It's people aren't going to traditional news sources anymore. Like I remember when I was younger, I was permanently on the BBC website. That just doesn't happen. All of my news comes through various social media channels, and there's been a huge change in how it's broadcast to accommodate that. But I think we still have some traditional big hubs that aren't quite there yet. And in a couple more years, that will all be digital first, is what we call it, like social first content.
Do you think TV will still remain, or will it be something of the
Traditionally,
past?
no, it will be streaming services, I would have thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
just because of people's lives and the convenience of what that offers. Live TV, I think, will always be relevant to sport, which is good.
Mhm.
And I don't see televised sport thinking it has a better home online yet because of that family interaction of everyone sitting down around a telly and getting the snacks out, making the barbecue, like it's
I
an
agree.
occasion as much as it is
Yeah.
something to watch.
Yeah. It's an experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shared experience for a lot of
Yeah.
people. So I think that will remain the same. Yeah, but and then the advent of like AI. I mean, I personally am not into that overly.
Yeah.
But like not AI, sorry, AI and virtual reality
Yeah.
and second worlds and all of that. Like
Yeah.
I think it remains to be seen how that is going to have a direct impact in
Yeah.
certain spaces. I would say that arguably we are leaning still back toward, even though that's kind of come out, we're probably leaning back towards traditional.
Yeah.
It's a very cool extra, but I wouldn't say it's going to replace what exists.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a huge movie nerd. I went to film school, and I also asked myself the question about, well, will movies still be in theaters and stuff like that? And I think it's just like sports and TV and everything. Like the experience, you can never replace that on a home watching
Yeah.
Netflix. Like just buying the popcorn, going out with your
Yeah.
family, all that stuff. So yeah, and I think there's like a huge resurgence each year of retro stuff and like older stuff becoming back in the trend.
You're talking about cameras now, aren't you?
Yeah, cameras, or just like my little sister, she's 16, and like she's going to film school as well, and like there's a at her age there's like a huge resurgence of like wanting to get back into theaters and like going to watch
Yeah.
movies and stuff like that. So yeah, I
That's
think
really
they'll,
nice.
yeah, always be a part of that. That's still gonna stay there. um if you were doing this, what do you think you'd be doing instead? I know it's a common question, but
Oh,
I
no,
like
I
that.
like it. I I would. I honestly don't know what track I would have gone down, but if I had a choice now, I would probably be in well, I say that I'm a business owner, right? Like we have an affiliate and various other things going on. But if we put that aside, maybe sports psychology is probably the thing that interests me the most.
Hmm.
I still think I'd probably be working in sport because it's been such a pivotal part of my entire life, like
Yeah,
doing and then obviously now working on it on this side.
yeah. Are you
So something
still
in that.
Are you still heavily involved in the
Yeah.
affiliates that you have? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like I
Nice.
live there.
Yeah.
I'm super lucky that basically Mark, my husband, pretty much is the on the ground man, even though he has a real big boy job as well.
Hmm.
Um, so he does a lot more coaching than I do, but I'm down there every day. I do a lot of the digital marketing back end stuff. Anything I can do when I'm on the road, that kind of
Yeah.
becomes my responsibility.
Yeah.
A lot of communication stuff with our members,
That's
planning
awesome.
parties, very good at planning a
Yes.
party. We've got the
Yeah.
Open coming up, so planning the Open and Friday Night Lights,
Yeah.
all of those kind of things.
I think you being so close to the deepest level to the community, like also makes you such a good reporter, like with the rest of the skills that you have. Because you are in the gym day in day out. You see the community, you see everybody on the human level, and I think that's really cool that you own an affiliate with your husband. Yeah,
But I feel like a lot of us are like that, right? Like, I mean,
of
like most
course,
of the girls who are in my position, we like were coaching or like
of course.
involved. I'm not sure about you, videographer guys, but I think we all found CrossFit out of a passion of being in a gym. Like
Yeah,
we
of
all
course.
found this line of work because that's kind of what we did, and that's why the community is so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all more or less close to it to different levels. But you being there, like, and owning an affiliate, I think it's also really cool. Um, all right, we're close to the end, but do you want to talk about, like, what's next for you, what you can talk about, like any exciting things, or just personal goals, stuff that you'd like to do in the foreseeable future?
My next thing is next weekend. I am covering the England Weekend of Strength, which is a weight category strongman, strongwoman competition.
Hmm.
That is in Doncaster Dome in the north of England, and it will be the start of kind of like the qualification series to the bigger events that happen later in the year.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. So like we're talking about official strongman games is kind of like the big pinnacle for weight classes,
Hmm.
and that happens over in America, and then there's a European version.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's next weekend, and I will be doing a mix of commentary and running around with a microphone and camera and getting kind of athlete interviews. But that's a
Yeah.
really cool world. It's so far removed from everything else I do. Like it's so
Yeah.
different, but everyone's super kind and they're still getting to grips with what media is.
Yeah.
And it's a really like lovely sport to be invited into because I'm still very new there. So
Yeah.
they've been, super welcoming. Off the
Cool.
back of that,
Awesome.
it will be back into the Hyrox, back into
Yeah.
the final few. There's a couple of little like one-offs. I've started. I'm doing marathons this year, which I'm pretty pumped about.
Sick.
So covering some marathon events in the UK, and
Yeah.
then Hyrox is coming to a close. We've got our final major in Glasgow, and then it'll be the Barcelona Last Chance qualifiers.
Yeah.
So that is a sick job, man. That's so
Awesome.
they're working so closely with Red Bull. It's brought me right back into like, you know, the team is not the same team that I used to work with on mountain biking, but
Yeah.
it's a really similar vibe. So
Yeah.
I'm really appreciating that at the moment, working with the Red Bull guys again and the Hyrox team. And then
Awesome.
so a busy year coming up.
Yeah, nice.
Well,
And
that's a
one
few
very
months.
last thing that came to my mind, you can keep it short. What's one thing you would say to your younger self or a young
Ooh.
girl that would want to enter your industry?
Um, it's easier if I say it to a young girl because I'm not sure I would have believed myself back in the day. But it would be the people who go far. It doesn't matter whether you're in presenting or you're in camera work or whatever it is. The people who get the opportunities and the people that go far are the people that don't give up. The people who
Yeah.
are still plugging away at it. It's very easy to settle for an easy job, an easier path in life. Very much like fitness. It's very easy to settle for the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And in the current moment, that might be what you want most. But
Yeah.
actually, long term, that's not going to help you. So you got to keep going or down that hard route, keep plugging away, because those who stick with it do get rewarded at the end of
Yeah.
the journey.
I love that. That's awesome. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on and giving me some of your precious time and having this conversation with me. I hope
Pleasure.
I'll see you soon at whatever comes next, where I'll be shooting and you'll be there with the mic.
Hope so.